Hey everybody, Wintermute here, coming for you from the think tank. I just want to say real quick, I do know that originally I talked about wanting to do strategy videos on this channel, and I absolutely am going to get to that. I've also kind of, now that I've started doing videos, I've kind of realized those will be a little bit more time consuming to make and have a little more time to get set up and get right. So they're percolating, and I will get to that point. But right now, this is kind of a quicker, easier way to cut my teeth. And so far, I don't think it's something anybody's ever really gone in depth on. Is the tech options and what's good for what nation on any of the other channels. So I'm liking that so far. That hopefully I'm contributing to the community in a way that hasn't been done before. So as of now, I'm probably going to finish the series. I think America's the last one I have to do after this, because I'm not going to do China, and I'm not going to do France for the obvious reasons. If you need me to explain why, send me a message or something, and I'll do that. But so with that said, let's get into Japan. Now, Japan starts off with two major factories, so they start off with two dice. Now, they have the option of upgrading this southernmost factory. Let me move these in a little bit. Southernmost factory, basically from turn one, which would give them three dice starting with turn two. Now, I will say this. With Japan, this is actually not a clear-cut decision. Yeah, like any other nation, they want those extra tech dice are good. But I can also tell you from playtesting Japan in anticipation of the spring offensive, they do not start the 36 scenario with a whole lot of ground troops. So that 6 IPP you would put into upgrading that factory could translate into 2 more infantry, which actually might be very valuable for Japan in the early game because, like I said, they just don't start with a whole lot of ground troops. And they do not start with a very big economy. That's the other thing to consider. They only start at 16. Now, they'll be up to 19 on the following turn because of the oil money from America. But, for everything that they need to do, that ain't a whole lot. It really isn't. Their Navy is strong. They have a decent Air Force. But you definitely want more Navy and you definitely want more Air Force. But at the same time, you just do not have a whole lot of ground troops to play with for prosecuting the ground war, assuming you're going to go into China or even if you're going to the Dutch East Indies. You're going to have to spend quite a bit of time building up ground units and Marines and things like that to be able to effectively prosecute that. So, that is one thing to consider with that 6 IPP early on, is whether or not you think that's better off being 2 more infantry or something along those lines, or going ahead and getting that extra tech die. Now, again, kind of like with Germany, Japan is very limited on what is considered its home territory. So it needs to, if you ever want to do another or get another tech die, you only have one choice beyond upgrading the Kyushu factory, and that's up here in Honshu. And Honshu is, it's obviously right next to Tokyo, and it basically the way these sea zones work out is kind of a little weird because they're just so big, and there's really only 2 sea zones that border Japan itself. So you're looking at 18 IPP to make that happen, and obviously over 3 turns. And is that something you want to do right away? Maybe, but you are definitely signaling to your opponents that you are not going to be very aggressive early on, because that's going to eat up quite a bit of your resources to get to that point. And really, at that point, you're not going to get a whole lot out of that other than the tech die, because the way those borders break down, you can already build plenty of ships here and here without any problem, including land units. You can build 5 here, and 5 there. You just can't build them straight into Honshu, which maybe you want the option to be able to do. So really upgrading, getting that factory upgraded to a major, or building a major factory there is you're really looking at just getting the tech die out of it. So just things to consider when it comes time to plan your builds for Japan. Now, what techs are actually good for Japan? Japan's not quite as clear cut as you would think, because they definitely need to, obviously they're a big naval power. So at first thought you're like, well, yeah, let's go for all that Navy stuff. On the other hand, they need to win the ground wars, and their ground wars are a little harder fought in some ways than it is going into Russia, because everything is an amphibious assault almost to start the game with, and so you got to take that into account, and the units you would need for that, like Marines. And then on top of that, some of this terrain is pretty rough. You've got some coastal territories over here in China that are flat, but look at the rest of this. The rest of this is all mountains and swamps, or marshes, excuse me, or fortified areas like over here in Malay, and jungle, and just not marshes, excuse me, jungle, and that's some difficult slogging right there. So I would definitely recommend looking up the specific rules, especially for jungle and how it affects mechanized units, and take that into consideration as you're looking at your builds. And in addition, what kind of tech you're gonna want to start building. So with that said, there's advanced artillery. For winning ground combats, this is pretty good with first strike and everything. But it's a artillery class unit. So in an amphibious assault, barring this tech, you're not gonna get first strike at all, and you're just gonna have to wait till the second round. So you got to think about that. Advanced mechanized infantry, probably not a high priority. The movement 2 can come in useful, I think, when you are looking at going into deep. If you're looking at either defending what you have in China, because you do have some clear territories down here, or when you're looking to land units here or build units here in Nanking, if you build a factory and then go in, being able to reach the front all that much quicker, maybe you do want advanced mech at that point. And kind of the same thing with heavy armor. The stats are good, it's solid, but again, it's also mechanized, excuse me, not mechanized, it's an armor class unit, so it's not landing first in an amphibious assault. And, those three just probably aren't worth it. You're not going to be doing a whole lot of blitzing with Japan. Again, though, if you look at the map, there can be exceptions. Mongolia, if you want to go into Mongolia, the northern part of Mongolia is very mountainous, but the southern part of it is very flat, all the way out here to Xinjiang. So maybe you do want to go ahead and blitz right through Mongolia, starting over here in Western Manchuria. And so you will go ahead and build some armor, and maybe you think that advanced mech and heavy armor is worth it to get some more punch up there. And actually India is kind of flat itself, but I mean, India is a whole nother ball game, because, Britain's going to defend that tooth and nail. So you're probably not going to find yourself in a position where you've got a whole lot of opportunities to blitz, even if you are going into the parts of India that are open and flat. And then, of course, all these other islands, you're not blitzing anywhere. So, you really need the heavy armor and mech infantry and advanced artillery. Maybe. I'm not going to take them off the table as an option, but I don't know I would call them a good option. Jet fighter. Now, this is a good one for Japan. They want lots of air power, lots of punch with those. I think their sneak attack wears off before you would be able to get jet fighters. I would have to specifically look at that. No, it doesn't. It doesn't expire like the Germans does. So, I mean, maybe you really do save that for much later in the game, and you've got jet fighters doing first strike on that first round. Well, that's pretty good. So yeah, jet fighters are a good choice for Japan. Heavy strategic bombers, probably not. They're not going to have a now. Okay, let me say they have plenty of targets to strategically bomb. The map is littered with targets that they can strategically bomb. There's ports and major ports and dockyards and all that all over this area down here. But is it really worth it for them to bomb those facilities? Probably not. One exception possibly being India and Calcutta, where they want to go ahead and bomb the factories to make them have to spend money to repair them. But even then, are you going to really try to get heavy strategic bombers when you can just build some medium bombers and go in from here and in this area and bomb Calcutta directly? That's probably more effective than trying to build heavy strategic bombers. So just probably not a good choice for them. Long range aircraft. Now, this is an excellent choice for Japan. They start off with a decent amount of aircraft. You will build more aircraft as the game goes on, and the ability to really reach out and touch somebody with those aircraft is so important for them. And the ability to constantly be putting their aircraft in whatever fight they want to maximize the chance of winning that is really crucial to them. So extra movement for all of your aircraft just makes that more likely that you're going to have that one extra space to be able to reach that territory that you need to attack this turn and make it happen. So yeah, long range aircraft is a top tier pick for them. Advanced subs, not a terrible choice. Definitely a later game thing. America now they don't do as much. I mean, they probably will do convoy raiding as the game goes on, because they do have the they've got this line here and this line here. They could even go all the way over to Africa and hit this line here. So in that sense, it's not terrible. It would be good in a sea battle itself. And they can start splashing advanced submarines, kind of like you would want to do with the Germans, and pick off smaller portions of the American fleet with first strike and stuff like that. And then of course America has this line here, assuming that you haven't already taken the Philippines. So they can do convoy raiding, or they could just use them to be better naval units. So advanced subs are not a terrible choice either. Strategic rockets, again, probably not worth it for Japan. Again, they have plenty of targets to strategically bomb. There's ports all over the place down here. But to really get your money's worth, you usually want to hit something that has a high capacity, and that it's something that that the Allies need to repair, because they need to get that bonus the following turn. Because there are plenty of things you can bomb, and the Allies might go, well, whatever, I'll just leave it damaged. I don't really care about that. So minor ports, generally speaking, you're not going to want to strategically bomb. That said, there's a chance you could get strategic rockets over here, and they can start reaching Calcutta for the factories, or the port, or British Malaya for the dockyard there, and things like that. So, I would take some time to look at the map and look at your options for that. But is it really worth it for them? I think you're going to get much more mileage out of something else. The only nation that I think Japan really wants to strategically bomb on a regular basis is FEC, to keep their troop and their economy under control. I know that's a reasonable thing that Japanese players do in an attempt to kind of keep them under control. But beyond that, you could go try to bomb Sydney, but you're probably sticking yourself out there really far, and that's a lot more logistically much more of a pain in the butt to do. So again, strategic rockets probably aren't really worth it for Japan overall. Radar, air bases can scramble, fighter interception. Now, of course, historically, America, just absolutely strategically bombed Japan into submission. It just, and I've even heard people who were alive during that time period say, even after the first nuclear bomb was dropped, for us, the reality was we were more afraid of the American bombers than the nukes. Nukes just do what they do, but American bombers are all over the country, hitting every part of this country. And if you're going to die, you're more likely to die from a regular bomber. So that said, America could come at Japan with that same kind of mindset and really want to bomb out your economy and bomb out your factories. So maybe you go ahead and you want to go ahead and build radar to be able to put all your fighters up and give them that +1 interception. Beyond that, though, it's still more of just a defensive tech more than anything. So is it really worth it? Probably not. And again, if you get into a fight here in this sea zone, you already have a airfield here. You can build another airfield. Oh, I'm sorry. You've got the one in Tokyo too. So already you can put 6 up to here. And here, if you get into a fight over here, you can bring from Honshu over, there's 3, and then you can come over here from Korea. So you can get 6 here and 6 here. Do you really need more than that? Maybe, for a fight. But, that's by that point, if you're fighting that defensively, you're already probably, hurting. So, again, I'm not going to take it off the table, but it's probably the lowest tier you can think of. Wartime economy, and again, Japan's economy is very small to start, and unlike Germany, they are more in a position to nickel and dime it. Germany takes out France; it's a huge bump. Then they get Poland really easy. Oh, and then they've got Belgium and which is and then the Netherlands if they go for the Netherlands. Right there's like another 4 right off the top. So they really get a huge economic bump from taking out France. And the lowland countries there, and then just 2 more for taking out Poland. And then if they go into the Balkans, right there's another 3 alone just for Yugoslavia, which is pretty good. So they have very, very good pickings, so to speak, of the territories that they go and take. Japan is a little bit more in a position where they nickel and dime it. The territories that they are going to go after are going to be 1s and 2s, basically. I think there's an exception of Calcutta, which is a 3, but beyond that and beyond Japan itself, it is everything. There's nothing over in this area that's higher than a 2, even down in Sydney. So they nickel and dime it a little bit more when they're trying to grow their economy. So they have to fight for every territory that they take, even more so than probably the Germans do in that initial wave. And so they're not going to have that huge increase. Even when they go into Japan, and then even when they go into China, they don't get their wartime bonuses for those territories until they're actually at war with a major power. So, some of those territories you get the 1 or 2 IPP bonus for, but not right away. You just get what's on the map itself. So, wartime economy is just fantastic for them. It just takes so much pressure off them. Another 7 IPP a turn is basically 1 more transport or 1 more destroyer every turn. And if Japan can get to the point where they can just drop a destroyer and not even worry about it, just, okay, every turn I'm putting another destroyer in, that really builds up over time, gives you more movement options with your amphibious assaults, and, really gives you a chance to stand up to the American Navy because you've got those, destroyers, which are, the best soak-off barring the units that start the game, the torpedo boat destroyers and coastal subs, they're your next best bet. And they actually hit on a 4 when they defend and attack, so they're actually pretty good. And of course, Japan has their movement or transport bonus, which is even better. Wartime economy is just absolutely fantastic for Japan. Now, improved factories. This one is actually better than it looks to begin with. Now, if you look at the map, Japan only starts off with 1 improved or 1 minor factory. But if you can double the output there, that's awesome. I would like to build I can't remember whether this version has a factory already in Nanking or not. I don't think it does. But if it doesn't, I want to build a factory there in Nanking because I want to be able to put more units directly onto the mainland if I'm going deep into China than having to just constantly rely on transporting them over. That'll save that logistically. It becomes easier, and I think that is worth spending the money on. And you already have the one in Rihei, so being able to double their output is just all that much better. Now, as far as their homeland factories go, getting up to 8, you kind of go, well, okay, so what? But again, I've played in games, or I've seen this in Global 40, where you think Japan is defended. The Japanese player looks at it and it's like, yeah, it's defended. But then the Americans suddenly roll in. They knock out a portion of your fleet. Yeah, you damage them, but you don't knock their fleet to the bottom of the ocean. And then suddenly you're looking at Japan and you're doing the math and you're going, it's not as well defended as I thought it would be. So if you really need to dump 8 guys into Tokyo all of a sudden, you can dump 8 guys into Tokyo all of a sudden. Same thing with the other 2 territories, being able to just dump those extra guys into those territories to make things, to really bolster your defense right away, it wouldn't be terrible. And even logistically, where you want to put your units on some of these sea zones to be able to go and pick them up, it might be, now Japan, the way these are organized is pretty. It's pretty easy to do that, but maybe you want to put 8 guys here and 8 guys here so that the 8 transports you have can hop over here, pick them all up, and keep on moving, rather than having to spread them out. Maybe spend an extra movement point to go into this zone when you don't necessarily want to because you're trying to come down here. So it's not a it's improved factories isn't a terrible choice. I also like to build a factory or 2 in Siam. Again, that puts my ability to produce units closer to the front rather than relying on everything coming from Japan itself. So yeah, improved factories I think is a viable option. Improved construction, now this is probably top tier for Japan. As far as facilities go, you may actually want to upgrade a bunch of ports or build some extra ports out here to ensure that your ships are always getting that +1 movement. You may want to build a lot of sub-pens all over this. You just dot the board with them and do a sub-spam type tactic and constantly give them the ability to always be able to move 4 spaces. So that aspect of improved construction could pay off for Japan based on what you're doing. But realistically, more important, it's the second part. Making your ships cheaper in general is Japan's going to build ships. Even though I feel that they need to spend the first part of the game really building up their land military to be able to get these areas based on their initial setup. At some point they're going to have to shift that economy over or start every turn putting out another sub or another destroyer or start another cruiser to be able to hope to go toe to toe with America. Not even counting the fact that they still want to build aircraft carriers and battleships and things like that. So in the money you can save from improved construction makes it worth it alone, for the ships alone. And then, maybe America comes into the war early and you're like, all right, I need to get a heavy battleship out ASAP. So now you go ahead and you double up that first cost, and then the following turn it'll hit the board and America has to deal with it because they're only over here now. Next turn they come over here, they have to deal with it in some form or another. Improved construction is definitely one I would go for with Japan. And then we get to heavy battleship, heavy carrier, totally worth it. Attack transport, totally worth it. Absolutely, all 3 of those are worth it for Japan. If I had to pick one, you would just have to kind of look at the situation you're in. Heavy carrier, if you've got a big air force that you want to be able to put out at the sea, heavy carrier may be your better bet. If you think you just want those nice cheap hits for the battleship to suck up, because he has a ton of firepower, well then maybe a heavy battleship is worth it. So you'll just have to make the judgment call on how your game is going. And of course, attack transport, do I even need to explain why those are good for Japan? Because even in the late game, you're going to probably be doing amphibious assaults all over the board. if not every turn you play, somewhere, somehow. You're going to want to put yourself in a position where even if America comes over and FEC or the Anzacs start taking back some of the territories you got, you want to be able to, counter take them, and attack transport just makes that just all that much easier for you to do. And then you can, if you did get the advanced artillery and things like that, they're landing turn one, so they can first strike, as far as I understand the rules. And so yeah, attack transport's totally worth it for Japan. So yeah, that's my take on Japan, and kind of where they sit with things. And if you kind of say there aren't many on this list that I just sort of shrugged and say totally not worth it. There's maybe three, one or two or three that I just kind of said totally not worth it. Everything else is a viable option, just depending on how your game is going and again what your strategy is. The only two that I think are almost an always take is wartime economy and improved construction. And you've got 2 dice to start the game off with right there and then to start rolling for them. Maybe a third to start rolling for something that you think is a little more, you'd like to have, but it's not the higher priority. So yeah, that's Japan. Any questions or comments, or you think that I'm absolutely wrong in my assessment? Let me know. Wintermute signing off.